Hi everybody, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar. The other day I was at the bookstore and I went to the magazine section and I realized that it's been a long time since I checked out some of the magazines. Usually I like to check out the horror magazines, the martial arts magazines, and of course the music, mostly guitar magazines. Well, my eyes went right to Guitar World magazine just because it's been around for so long and it's one of the only ones left at this bookstore. I think they have Total Guitar as well, but that's about it. And there's Angus Young on the cover and I was like, okay, sweet, I'm going to check this out. As I was looking through it, it struck me that a lot of the things that are in it are still very consistent with what I remember guitar magazines having forever, ever since I started getting them. And I thought it would be a really fun video to go home and look through all my magazines and find the oldest one that I own. The one I found isn't one that I bought at the time that it was released. It's actually one that I ordered just because it was retro. So it's from 1985 because I didn't start getting guitar magazines till like 87. So I thought that was perfect because 1985 and this came out like last week, so 40 years difference. And I thought it's going to be really cool to compare them and see which one wins out in certain areas and just how they, differ and how they're similar after 4 decades. By the way, here's the 1985 guitar. This is actually a guitar for the practicing musician. So it's a different company, I believe. Maybe they're owned by the same corporate overlords or something, but I'm not really sure. Oops. That's the thing about magazines. They're tangible. They fall off your lap. They tear. It's kind of an organic experience, The first obvious thing to compare is the price. When I went to buy this Guitar World magazine the other day, I went up to the counter and the lady's like, that'd be like $10.95 or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, $10.95 for a magazine. I shouldn't complain because in Canada it's $12.50, but still. I even told the lady that I remember back when guitar magazines were like $3. She just kind of rolled her eyes at me. But okay, so let's compare the price. Guitar World magazine, $9.99. With tax, it came to like $10.64 or something like that. The old Guitar for the Practicing Musician goes for $2.75. What I did was I went to the inflation calculator online and I typed this in. I typed in the date and all that kind of stuff. And it said that if you bought this magazine today with inflation, it would actually be $8.32. So I guess $9.99 is not super crazy or anything like that, but still, it took me by surprise. They say not to judge a book by its cover, but you have to judge a magazine by its cover. So if you check out the old school magazine, you've got Ritchie Blackmore on the cover. It's a little more straightforward looking. You know what I mean? You've got the price and the date at the top. You've got real skinny fonts. So the only thing that really sticks out to me is the name of the magazine and the name Ritchie Blackmore. I also like that it says you're getting $12.50 worth of guitar sheet music, by the way, in this magazine. That's quite a deal, actually. But I would have to say that the new magazine wins out when it comes to the cover because, first of all, it's not really fair, but it's my 3 favorite colors right on the cover, black, white, and red. But you got this killer picture of Angus Young live. The fonts look really great, and the layout is just balanced really well. The old magazine, it looks a little bit off balance. I don't know. That's just what my eye sees. But, I just had to go with the newer one for that. I also like the way Angus's hand goes in front of the Guitar World logo. I remember when they first started to do that on magazine covers, and I always thought that was pretty cool. It gives it more of a 3D type of look. And if you go back to the old version of the magazine, it looks very, very two-dimensional. Now, it seems really stupid to judge it by the back covers, but I'm going to. The reason why is because it's kind of funny. On the back of the newer magazine, Guitar World, there's like a pretty woman playing a guitar, kind of like a fairy type atmosphere. And, it's actually an advertisement for something. Oh, for a traveler's guitar. Now, the old magazine still has an advertisement. It's for Kahler bridges. But what's hilarious, it's like this diagram of a bridge and how it goes together. And it would really appeal to the tech geeks, the guitar players that really love the inside baseball when it comes to how things work. And there's this little coupon you can cut out on the corner that you send it in. You can get the catalog for Kahler. I thought that was pretty nostalgic. So yeah, for guitar geeks, this is great. But the newer magazines are like, screw it. Let's just put a pretty girl on the back. You're going to see a theme when it comes to these two, the more I get into this. Now, the newer magazine wins out when it comes to the side binding, I think it's called, of the magazine. Because the newer version of the magazine has the binding, so when you put this on your shelf, you can actually read what magazine it is and who's featured on it and the date and all that stuff. So I really value that because I have a lot of magazines like the old one that doesn't have anything for the binding on the side, and you put them all in and you got to pull them out in order to see which one it is. So I really love the fact that they went to the actual binding over time. So the new one wins out in that department. Okay, how about number of pages? So you kind of want things to be consistent as far as value goes. So you don't want shrinkflation to happen to magazines, where they put less of something, hoping you don't notice. Well, I know it's going to be arbitrary per month, but the old one in this case has 96 pages total. And I was surprised to find out, because it feels thinner, that the newer magazine has over 100 pages, 110 to be exact. I think it's just the overall thickness of each page is thinner for the new one, so it feels a lot thinner overall, but it's not. It actually contains more pages than the old one. As far as the songs that they tab out for you, the newer version has only 3 songs, but they include both the guitar tab and the bass tab. So they have The Doors' Peace Frog, Ginger, Green Serpent, and Lynyrd Skynyrd, I Ain't the One. So a very eclectic mix of songs on this one. The older one's pretty eclectic as well. Midnight Maniac, Highway Star, All Night Long, and General Lee. Those are the 4 songs that they tab out. Now, like I mentioned, the newer magazine has the bass tab included underneath the guitar tab, so you can read both simultaneously. But the old version, this is so funny. They say that the bass line is included for one of the songs called General Lee, but what they actually did was they had the guitar tab morph into bass tab just for one section of the song where it goes to a bass solo. I found that hilarious. I don't actually think I've seen that before, to tell you the truth, and I have a lot of tab books and magazines. And by the way, there is a bass tab inside this during sort of a lesson segment for a song called For the Love of Money, so I guess you could include that in this as well, the old one. Now, speaking of tabs, something that disappeared over the 40 years is the use of guitar notation when it comes to Guitar World magazine, at least. I remember when they stopped using notation and went just with tablature. You know, they still have the rhythm markings and they still have the chords and all that stuff, but there was no more dots and lines going on as far as notation went. As far as the quality of the tab, it has gotten better over the years for the most part, because technology has helped that quite a bit. If you go back to the old magazine right here, this is kind of funny because there's a Steve Morse song. I already mentioned it. It's called General Lee. And when it comes to that bass part, it just gets so crazy. There's no way this is correct. Now, that being said, it is a Steve Morse song, so you never really know. But I highly doubt that Gentry played this part for the bass solo. Check this out. So it switches to eighth note triplets. So they got that going on. But then these runs are just ridiculous. It sounds like slap bass in the recording. I'll play that for you really quick. Watch this. Open 7th fret, 11th fret, open 2nd fret, 7th fret. Come on. And then 3rd fret, 8th fret to 9th fret. That's hard to do slow, let alone slapping it at an insane speed like this. So it looks like this could be a very good contender for my Bad Tab series, but the magazine edition. So keep an eye out for that in the near future. Just like everybody else, I despise too many ads. You know, when it comes to YouTube, a lot of people complain, you know, the ads before the video and all that stuff. By the way, I don't put those on. YouTube does that. When it comes to the old magazine, I'm sure you could pretty much predict this. There were only 2 ads before you got to the actual table of contents and into the magazine. Now, guess how many were before the table of contents in the newer magazine? 7. So over 3 times as many. So as you open it up, there's, you know, ads right away. It's just like ad, all the way across a 2-page ad. Bam, finally the table of contents. So I'm sure you could have guessed that, like I said. Now, this was pretty surprising because I counted all the total ads in the magazines. And for the new one, there were 27 ads total. So, you know, including the 7 that were before the table of contents. But I noticed that almost all the ads were either full-page ads, and some of them were even 2-page ads. Towards the back, they had smaller ads where they could fit 2 of them per page, but for the most part, they were like full-pagers. The old one actually has 34 ads, if I counted correctly. I think I got pretty close. There were a lot of them. But like I said, more of them were small. Some of them had 2 per page, some had 4. And so they're kind of scattered around the magazine. Whereas the newer version of the magazine, it was way more blatant. It's like this entire page is going to be dedicated to this product. I really love some of the advertisements, though, from the old magazine because it brings me right back to the old days, you know? Just the certain pedals that were coming out, and they had like the perfect pitch course, and all that stuff is very nostalgic to a lot of us older guitar players. Ran out of air there, sorry. The reason why I think the older one had more ads is because, sadly, you know how magazines have been dying out for a long time now. So I think it's probably harder for them to get advertisers for the magazine because a lot of people just probably do the ads online with Guitar World or whatever they do. But if they were to advertise in this, I bet you the selling point is we're going to give you a full freaking page. And that's pretty tempting. I'm thinking of actually putting an ad in a Guitar World magazine. It'd be so cool to get a full page for Art of Guitar. And then, even if not a ton of people see it, I could say, hey, I was in Guitar World magazine finally. Now, that being said, Guitar World did name us as one of the top 10 guitar channels on YouTube one time. So I have to say that I kind of got in Guitar World, but just online. Now, what I thought I would do is talk about what they share in common as far as features. And then after that, I'll talk about what each one has to offer separately between the new and the old magazine. I'm also going to do a poster reveal, by the way, one that has never been taken out of one of these magazines. I'm kind of excited. Both magazines include a section where they take write-ins from their subscribers. So anybody can write in. It's kind of like a letter to the editor, I think, or, you might write in with some questions or something. And both of them have that. In the newer magazine, it's called the Sounding Board. And the old one, it's just called Letters. I just got to read you one of these letters from the old magazine because I don't know, there's something really sweet about it. I think it was great of you to print the music to Crazy Train in your October issue, but why didn't you put Randy Rhoads on the cover? That's actually a really great question. They both include artist spotlight. Obviously, you want to talk about, guitar players and people that are up and coming and all that kind of stuff. I found that the newer magazine had way more artists that they covered. But the drawback of that is they each got less space in the magazine. Whereas the old version has fewer artists, but they really went in depth. So some of these guys had 2 or 3 pages with questionnaires and just information about the artist. So it's kind of a give and take. Do you want more artists with less information or the opposite? They both contain lessons, which is so awesome. I used to learn so much from magazines because before we had YouTube or even the internet, it was really hard to learn anything new. So it was really cool whenever you had somebody just write in a lesson in one of the magazines. The old one contains about 3 lessons, but they're longer. You're going to see that as a theme here. We had a lot more free time back then, so we just sit and read and we take everything in. The newer ones are so columnized, if that's a word. And, so you'll know there's going to be these 3 lessons, or this one page is just going to be this one lesson from this one guy. This one's going to be, Joe Bonamassa giving a lesson. Now, something really weird happened when I tried to scan this page, so it totally looks crazy, but maybe that's good for copyright. Take my word for it, these lessons are priceless. Now, they both contain performance notes, which is just them explaining the songs that they're going to tab out in some detail, so that it's kind of a good way to give you some heads up on maybe a few things that might trip you up in the songs that you're about to learn. They both contain products and, reviews for the products, but just like I keep talking about, the newer one contains a lot more. Like you're going to read a whole thing on pedal boards, there's pedals covered, there's guitars, there's just different things like that all over this magazine. So it's kind of like more advertising, but it's done in more of a review product type showcase. The older one has way less of that. Towards the back, you'll see some, but it's really not even close to what the new one's like. So the new one's like a catalog pretty much. Whereas the old one is more informative, but it will show you products, obviously, just not nearly as many. I think in the old one, there's only 2 pages really dedicated to new products. Now let's talk about what each magazine has to offer exclusively. So the new magazine is all color. Even the tab pages have color in them. And now they have these weird little color markers on the side, these little rectangles. I have no idea what those mean. I'm going to have to look into that. The newer magazine has a showcase for art. So it's called Reader's Art of the Month. And I thought that was pretty cool, being the art of guitar and all here. And here they have Jimi Hendrix, which is really cool. And one with Merle Haggard, hand drawn. I thought that was a nipple. I think that's a button on his jacket, actually. I love that the new magazine showcases up-and-coming unknown guitar players. So there's a page or 2, I believe, where they showcase people that just wrote in and said, hey, here's me playing, here's a picture of me, here's some information. And I remember when they started doing this because I thought, I want to be in that someday. I never did it, but I thought that would be really cool. It gives, the everyday bedroom guitar player a chance to be showcased in a timeless magazine like this. Now let's talk about what's exclusive to the older magazine. So there are black and white pages in here, so that's a good money saver back then. Color was just such a bonus to have. You're lucky to have any of it, actually. It also includes, like I talked about earlier, a poster, which I've never taken out of here. I'm going to ruin its resale value, but I do not plan on selling this thing. So let's take out the poster and see. Ooh, it says Yngwie Malmsteen. I feel like I just ruined the binding of this. Shoot. Okay, hopefully this is worth it. So they used to include, posters and just pictures. Oh, that's a badass poster. Look at that. I don't know where I'm going to hang it because I don't really hang up posters in my bedroom anymore, but maybe that's something I should start doing again. It's also a calendar. Watch all the pages just fall out now. No, I think it's still intact. Okay. It's being held together by 3 staples. Yikes. In addition to the letters section that I talked about earlier where people wrote in, there's actually a section called Guitar Questions where people just submit questions. Remember, we had no internet, so you can't just ask Google. This is their Google, basically. The first question, how do you go about painting guitars? It's such a big question. I talked about the poster already, but for some reason, there's 3 random pictures in this thing. So you have Nikki Sixx, Brian Setzer, and Prince. I'll show you the Brian Setzer and Prince right here. Now, the reason they did that is because back then, like I said, we didn't have the internet. So you could tear these out and put them on your wall. When I was a kid, I did that with Kiss pictures that were usually in 16 magazine, and I actually used super glue, and my dad was so mad at me. But since we couldn't just pull up an image and stare at it on our phones, we would take them out of magazines and put them somewhere like your locker or your bedroom wall in my case. And the last feature that I noticed just in this older one is a kind of a cool section called the vinyl score. And that's where they're talking about new releases as far as, songs or artists. So they have Power Slave by Iron Maiden. That's pretty cool. The Warning by Queensryche. And the first thing they do is they talk about the song Take Hold of the Flame, one of my favorite Queensryche songs. I like that they gave 2 pages for this because new releases were such a big thing back then. Nowadays, people release things every day online, so it's not as big of a deal. One thing I don't want to forget about this old magazine, in the very back, they have like this list of all these guitar players, and they call it Guitar Wars Round 4. So what they do is they have people vote for which artist they want to win each category or which section, and then that kind of branches off until you finally get to one final artist. And what really shook me a little bit was if you were to open up a magazine today, like if that newer magazine had this very thing, I think it would pretty much be the same guitar players. And that's not a good sign. You know what I mean? I would love it if they could do that today and there'd be a whole bunch of new guitar legends, but I just feel like it would look very close to what I'm seeing right here. It seemed like guitar magazines started to catch on to what their readers liked, I remember seeing more and more advertising with a picture of a girl like this on it. And because, like I keep saying, we didn't have any way to look at dirty pictures or anything crazy, for me it was either a certain section of the Sears catalog, or it was looking at my friend's older brother's poster of Samantha Fox on his wall, or in this case, it was looking at the girl who's modeling the Dean guitars. That's how innocent we were for a while. Anyhow, so if I have to break this down into my final thoughts, I would have to say that I think the newer magazines do a really great job promoting more artists and more products, if you will, but it does have sort of that, over commercialized type feel to it. Almost like it's not as concerned with really teaching you in-depth information, but it's more concerned with just giving you more. So it's more surface level, but you get a lot more of it. Aesthetically, it looks more pleasing, obviously it's more modern looking and all that kind of stuff, but it is really well laid out. The older magazine just feels like it has more heart to it. Like it really wanted to convey the information to you and really get in depth with the artists. And that's a huge thing about older magazines and older books. There's just more free time. So someone would sit on the toilet and read an entire article, instead of just looking at the phone and scrolling like they do today. And that really shines through in this magazine that, it's made for you to sit there and really take in as much as possible. Sure, there are still ads everywhere, but I feel like they're more in the background. They're not as in your face, but maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. More subliminal or something. I'm just glad that there are still guitar magazines out there, and hats off to Guitar World for sticking it out all these years. You've helped me out so much, and I'm actually going to do a video next week about all my tab books that I've got over the years. I think it's over 100 of them that I have right now, but I will also do one on my magazines someday, and there are a ton of Guitar World magazines. So growing up when I did, my heart is just with the older magazine. I just can't get over the nostalgia of it, but it was closer than I thought. You know what I mean? So this wins by like the razor's edge, if you will. Now we just have to figure out where to hang this Yngwie poster. Maybe it'll be behind me in my next video. Okay, everyone, thank you for watching. This was a blast to do. Had to whip out the old scanner, to get this video made. That was kind of weird, but we got it done, and we'll catch you at the next video. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.